All right, welcome in everyone. Today we're diving deep into some seriously thought-provoking stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You guys have expressed a ton of interest in understanding those covert contracts you might be operating under
Definitely.
and how our institutions has kind of shifted and changed over time.
Yeah.
So we are cracking open Conrad Reicher's War on Men
Mm-hmm.
to see what kind of insights we can pull out of here.
Yeah, great book.
Now this is a book that comes from what's called a red pill perspective.
Yeah.
And it's really questioning a lot of the accepted narratives about men and women in today's society.
It definitely aims to kind of turn everything upside down and look at it from a different angle.
Exactly.
Get you thinking a little differently
Exactly.
about, the dynamics between men and women in society.
Yeah. Yeah. So Riker really dives deep into the challenges that men face today,
Mm-hmm.
especially within marriage and fatherhood
Mm-hmm.
and even their own mental health. And he connects these personal struggles to broader changes in our society as a whole.
He does.
So let's just jump right into it.
Yeah.
One of his most attention-grabbing ideas, I think, is this concept of the marriage plantation.
Right. Yeah. This is where Riker really lays out the potential risks
Yeah.
that are out there for men who are either thinking about getting married or are already married.
Yeah.
And he argues that things like no-fault divorce,
Right.
alimony, and the way child support is often structured
Mm.
can really create a situation where men are at a significant disadvantage,
Yeah.
both financially and emotionally.
It's a pretty provocative way of putting it,
It is.
right? To call it a plantation.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway here for somebody listening who's either married or thinking about getting married?
Well, Riker's point is not to scare men away from marriage altogether.
Right.
It's more about awareness.
Okay.
He wants men to go into it with their eyes wide open,
Yeah.
understanding the potential pitfalls, and taking steps to protect themselves.
Like what? What kind of steps?
Well, like a prenuptial agreement.
Okay.
It's like, think of it like this. You wouldn't buy a house without having it inspected first, right?
Right.
A prenup is kind of like an inspection for your marriage.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So you're saying that even though marriage can be this beautiful, loving partnership,
Of course.
it also has this legal and financial structure that men need to be savvy about.
Absolutely. And that savviness can help men approach marriage from a place of strength and clarity,
Okay.
not just an emotional standpoint.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so now Riker also takes on this whole concept of toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
And he argues that this label is often used to demonize traits that are actually essential
I agree.
for men's well-being and success.
Mm-hmm.
Things like ambition, determination, confidence.
Yeah.
That seems to clash with a lot of what we hear in the media these days.
It does, right? There's definitely a tension there. And Riker really highlights this double standard
Yeah.
where society tells men to be strong and assertive,
Right.
but then criticizes them for being too aggressive or too dominant.
Right.
It's a real head scratcher for guys trying
Yeah.
to figure out how they're supposed to act.
It's like they're damned if they do and damned if they don't now.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And this is where understanding your own covert contracts comes in.
Right.
Riker argues that by recognizing these conflicting expectations,
Yeah.
men can start to make more conscious choices about how they navigate those expectations.
So it's not about suppressing those core masculine traits.
Right.
But it's about understanding the context
Yeah.
and choosing when and how to express them.
Exactly. It's about empowerment through awareness.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's add another layer to this.
Okay.
Riker talks about something he calls the gynocracy,
Mm-hmm.
it's a society that's dominated by feminist ideology,
Right.
where he argues men are systematically marginalized.
Yeah.
He points to things like biased media portrayals,
Yeah.
legal systems that favor women,
Yeah.
and education policies that he says disadvantage boys.
He does.
And this is where that historical context you mentioned comes into play.
Right. Yeah.
He argues that this shift towards gynocracy, as he calls it,
Mm-hmm.
didn't happen overnight.
No, it's been going on for a while.
He uses historical examples to show how men's roles and influence have been steadily eroded
Right.
over time, leading to the challenges men face today.
Exactly.
So he's saying that it's not just about individual experiences, but recognizing these larger patterns
Yeah.
that have been playing out for decades.
Yeah, connecting the dots between the past and the present.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there.
There is.
Riker doesn't shy away from tackling some really difficult topics.
No, he doesn't.
He also talks about this fatherhood crisis
Yes.
and what he calls the male loneliness epidemic.
Right.
And he argues that men are increasingly being sidelined in the family,
Mm.
facing uphill battles in custody courts,
Yeah.
and feeling isolated as those traditional male spaces disappear.
It's a big problem.
And this is where things get really personal.
Yes.
Yeah, Riker's asking you, the listener, to consider how these trends might be affecting you directly.
Yeah. Are you feeling that pressure
Yeah.
in your own family?
Yeah, are you struggling with loneliness
Mm-hmm.
or a lack of connection with other men?
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah. And that ties back to that desire to understand and amend these covert contracts,
Absolutely.
right? If men are feeling marginalized and isolated and unsure of their place,
Yeah.
how can they start to rewrite those unspoken rules they're living by?
That's the question, and
Yeah.
that's what we're going to try to figure out.
Yeah.
Riker believes that understanding the problem is the first step
Okay.
towards finding a solution.
Okay, so we've laid some groundwork here.
We have.
We've talked about the marriage plantation,
Yes.
the critiques of toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
the idea of a gynocracy,
Mm-hmm.
and the challenges men face with fatherhood and loneliness.
Right.
That's a lot to digest,
It is a lot.
but there's so much more to explore.
Oh, yeah, just scratching the surface.
So we'll dive into all of that in just a second.
I can't wait.
Stay with us.
So to kind of break free from these covert contracts
Yeah.
and create a more fulfilling life for themselves,
Mhm.
Riker argues that men need to really understand the biological differences
Okay.
between men and women and how those differences play out in societal roles.
Yeah, you don't hear that discussed too openly these
Right,
days.
I don't.
It's kind of a taboo topic.
Yeah.
So what's Riker's take on the biological differences?
Well, he looks at it from an evolutionary perspective.
Okay.
You know, he argues that certain male traits like leadership,
Mhm.
protectiveness,
Okay.
a willingness to take risks,
Yeah.
you know, these have a biological basis and,
Yeah.
and have historically been essential for driving progress,
Okay.
innovation, building civilizations, you name it.
So instead of seeing those traits as something to be ashamed of
Right.
or suppressed, he's saying they're actually valuable assets.
Exactly. He argues that denying those inherent differences
Yeah.
leads to all sorts of confusion and dysfunction,
Okay.
and it leaves men feeling lost and uncertain of their place in the world.
It's almost like we've been told to apologize for being men,
Yeah.
for having those natural instincts.
Right, and that's a sentiment that a lot of men in the red pill community express.
Okay.
And that sense of shame or confusion
Yeah.
can have a real impact on men's mental health.
Okay, this is something we hear more and more about these days.
Yeah.
The silent crisis of male mental health.
Yeah, it's a huge problem.
What are some of the specific concerns Riker raises?
Well, he points to the alarming rise in suicide rates among men,
Yeah.
the stigma surrounding male vulnerability, and this double bind,
Yeah.
where men are told to open up and be emotional,
Right.
but then often get ridiculed or dismissed when they do.
Right. It's heartbreaking, really.
It is.
It's like society wants men to be strong, but not too strong.
Right.
Sensitive, but not too sensitive.
Exactly.
It's a recipe for confusion and despair.
And that's why Riker stresses the importance of seeking help,
Okay.
building those supportive communities that we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
and really challenging those harmful societal norms
Yeah.
that contribute to this crisis.
So the supportive communities sound crucial.
They are.
It's about having a space where you don't have to pretend to be something you're not,
Right.
where you can be vulnerable and know that you're not alone.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that ties into another major theme. Riker explores
One thing.
the economic challenges.
Right. He calls it the male economic crisis.
Yeah.
It's not something you always hear about in the mainstream media,
No.
but it's definitely a reality for a lot of men out there.
It is.
So what are we talking about here? What are some of the specifics?
Well, Riker points to job displacement,
Right.
declining wages, and the rise of automation
Right.
as forces that are disproportionately impacting men,
Yeah.
especially those in traditional blue-collar jobs.
Okay.
And he argues that these economic shifts
Yeah.
are hitting men not just financially,
Right.
but also in terms of their sense of purpose and identity.
It's like those traditional roles that men used to derive their identity from
Yeah.
being the provider, the protector,
Right.
are becoming less and less relevant.
Yeah, and that can leave men feeling adrift,
Right.
unsure of how to find meaning and fulfillment in a world that seems to be shifting beneath their feet.
So what does Riker propose men do to navigate these economic headwinds?
Well, he's all about empowerment and taking action.
Okay.
He emphasizes the importance of adaptability, being willing to learn new skills, explore new industries,
Okay.
maybe even embrace entrepreneurship.
So it's that classic red pill message, taking control of your own destiny instead of waiting for the system to change.
Right, Riker wants men to look for opportunities in emerging fields.
Like what? What kind of fields?
Like technology, renewable energy,
Yeah.
areas where there's growth and demand.
Okay.
It's about embracing that entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
Being willing to take calculated risks
Mm-hmm.
and building a future that's aligned with your own values and goals.
That's inspiring.
Yeah.
It's about seeing these challenges not as roadblocks, but as opportunities
Yeah.
for growth and reinvention.
Exactly. That's the spirit.
Okay.
Riker doesn't want men to feel like victims of these societal forces.
Right.
He wants them to step up and become the architects of their own lives.
Okay, so we've talked about biology, mental health, and economics.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like Riker's painting a pretty bleak picture
Yeah, it can seem that way.
of the war on men.
Yeah.
But I sense there's a message of hope in there somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. Riker is not about doom and gloom.
Okay.
He's a firm believer in men's resilience
Yeah.
and their ability to overcome challenges. In fact, that's his message gets really powerful.
Okay.
He wants men to reject victimhood and take control of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And he outlines some very specific actions
Okay.
men can take to reclaim their masculinity,
Okay.
build strong communities,
Mm-hmm.
advocate for their rights,
Okay.
and prioritize their physical and mental well-being.
It's not just about complaining about the problem.
Yeah.
It's about finding solutions and taking action.
Exactly. Real change starts with each individual man
Okay.
taking responsibility for his own life,
Hmm.
his own choices, and his own destiny.
Okay. I'm starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel here.
Good.
So what are some of Riker's specific recommendations
Okay.
for men who are ready to take that next step?
Well, he starts by encouraging men to embrace those traditional male values that
Wow.
have been so often demonized
Right.
in recent years.
Yeah. Strength, courage,
Yeah,
honor, self-reliance.
exactly.
These are now seen as bad things.
Yeah.
So he's saying we need to reclaim those.
He argues that these are not toxic traits,
Okay.
but essential virtues.
It's not about going back to the Stone Age or rejecting progress.
Of course not.
It's about recognizing that those traditional values still have a place in the modern world.
Exactly. It's about finding a balance
Okay.
between the old and the new,
Hmm.
recognizing the value of both tradition and progress.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So embracing traditional values is one piece of the puzzle.
Is.
What else does Riker suggest?
Well, he puts a huge emphasis on building strong communities.
Okay.
Riker believes that men thrive when they have a sense of belonging, a tribe, a brotherhood.
Yeah.
And that's something that's been eroded in recent decades as those traditional male spaces have dwindled.
It's like we've lost that sense of camaraderie,
Yeah.
that shared purpose
Yeah.
that comes from working and playing and struggling alongside other men.
Exactly. And that's something Riker wants men to reclaim.
Okay, how do we do that?
He encourages them to create those spaces,
Okay.
whether it's a men's group, a sports team, a hobby club,
Mm-hmm.
or even just regular get-togethers with like-minded guys.
It's about finding your tribe, your band of brothers,
Yeah.
who understand you, support you, and challenge you to be your best self.
Exactly. And those connections can provide a lifeline
Okay.
for men who are feeling isolated or lost or unsure of their place in the world.
So embracing traditional values, building strong communities, that's a solid foundation.
It is.
What about taking action on a larger scale?
Okay.
How can men start to influence the institutions and systems that are shaping their lives?
Well, Riker is a big advocate for men getting involved in the political process.
Okay.
He believes that men need to have a voice
Yeah.
in shaping the laws and policies that affect their lives.
So it's about stepping up and saying, hey, our voices matter too.
Exactly.
We deserve to be heard, and our needs deserve to be addressed.
He encourages men to become more politically active, whether that's voting, contacting their elected officials, or even running for office themselves.
It's about taking ownership of the systems that govern our lives and not just passively accepting the status quo.
Right. He also suggests supporting organizations
Okay.
that are fighting for men's rights, donating to their causes, and volunteering your time.
It's about putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Not just talking about change, but actively working to make it happen.
Exactly. And Riker believes that even small actions can have a ripple effect.
Okay, so you're saying you don't have to be a superhero to make a difference.
Right.
That's encouraging.
And that leads us to another crucial piece of Riker's message.
Okay.
The importance of physical and mental well-being.
Okay, back to taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
This is where the rubber meets the road, right?
It is.
You can't fight a war on any front if you're not taking care of your own physical and mental health.
He's a huge advocate for men prioritizing their health, both for their own sake and for the sake of their families and communities.
Mm-hmm.
He encourages regular exercise,
Okay.
a healthy diet, stress management techniques, and seeking professional help when needed.
It's about recognizing that you can't be a good husband, a good father,
Right.
a good leader,
Right.
if you're burnt out, stressed out, and unhealthy.
Exactly. He also encourages men to find healthy outlets for their energy and aggression, whether it's through sports martial arts or other physical activities.
This aligns with what we were talking about earlier.
It does.
Recognizing and valuing those innate masculine traits. It's about channeling those drives in a positive and productive way.
Right. It's about harnessing that energy, that drive, that competitive spirit, and using it to fuel your goals and aspirations.
Okay, so we've got a pretty solid roadmap here.
Yeah.
Embrace traditional values. Build strong communities. Get involved politically. And prioritize your physical and mental health.
It's a holistic approach.
To reclaiming masculinity and creating a more fulfilling life.
And it all starts with taking that first step.
It does.
Making that commitment to yourself and to the future you want to create.
That's powerful.
It's about taking ownership, not waiting for someone else to give you permission.
Right.
Or tell you what to do.
Riker's message is all about empowerment.
Yeah.
He wants men to wake up, see the world clearly, and then step up and create the change they want to see.
This has been an incredible journey so far. We've covered a lot of ground, from biology to politics to personal growth.
We have.
But there's one more crucial piece of the puzzle that I want to explore before we wrap up.
And that is?
Identity Riker talks a lot about the male identity crisis. That feeling of being lost and directionless in a world that seems to be constantly changing.
That's something a lot of men are struggling with today.
Yeah.
It's like they've lost their compass, their sense of purpose.
Exactly. So how do we find our way again?
That's the big question.
Yeah.
How do we reclaim that sense of who we are and where we belong in the world?
Well, that's something we'll have to explore further.
Right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
I'm ready when you are. Okay, so we're back and ready to tackle this whole idea of a male identity crisis.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of guys listening can relate to that feeling of being adrift.
Definitely.
Like the old maps just aren't working anymore.
Nope.
You know?
Yeah, Riker argues that a lot of this stems from the erosion of those traditional roles we've been talking about.
Right, like being a provider, protector, those kinds of things.
And then you combine that with this constant barrage of negative messages about masculinity. And it's no wonder that a lot of men are feeling confused about who they're supposed to be.
It's like we're being told the things that used to define manhood are now outdated or even toxic.
Right. It's like a ship without a rudder.
Yeah.
Lost at sea.
Wow, it's a powerful image.
Yeah.
And I think it really captures that sense of disorientation. So if the old maps are useless, how do we find our way?
Right.
Does Riker offer any guidance?
He does.
Okay.
And it starts with looking inward.
Okay.
He encourages men to reconnect with their own inner compass. That unique set of values, passions, and talents that make them who they are.
So it's not about fitting into some predefined mold of what a man should be. It's about figuring out what kind of man you want to be.
Exactly. Riker argues that true fulfillment comes from aligning your life with your own authentic self.
Okay, so that resonates with me. But how do you actually do that?
Right.
It sounds great in theory.
Yeah.
Where do you even begin?
Well, Riker suggests exploring different avenues.
Okay, like what?
Hobbies, creative pursuits.
Okay.
Getting involved in your community, spending time in nature.
It's almost like giving yourself permission to play again.
Yeah.
To rediscover those things that brought you joy as a kid.
Exactly.
Before all the pressures of adulthood set in.
Yeah. Right. And it might mean stepping outside your comfort zone.
Cool.
Trying things you never thought you'd be interested in.
Okay.
You might discover some hidden talents or passions you never knew you had.
And that process of discovery, that willingness to explore and experiment, that in itself can be incredibly empowering.
Absolutely. And as you start to connect with those things that give you a sense of purpose, Riker believes you'll notice a ripple effect in other areas of your life.
Like what?
Your confidence will grow,
okay,
your relationships will improve, and you'll start to feel more grounded and fulfilled.
It's like that sense of purpose becomes an anchor.
Yeah.
A solid foundation
Right.
from which you can navigate the challenges and uncertainties of life.
Exactly. It gives you a direction, a reason to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
Even when things get tough.
And Riker believes that when men find that sense of purpose, they naturally become better husbands, fathers, and leaders.
Yeah, they bring that sense of purpose into those roles.
It's not about neglecting those roles, but approaching them from a place of wholeness.
Exactly.
From a sense of knowing who you are and what you stand for.
That's the key.
Man, this has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
We've covered so much ground. Marriage, masculinity, fatherhood, mental health, economics, identity.
We have.
It could feel overwhelming.
It can be.
But what I'm taking away from all of this is a sense of hope, a sense of possibility.
Yeah. That's what Riker ultimately wants to convey.
Yeah.
He doesn't want men to feel defeated or resign.
Right.
He wants them to feel empowered, to create the lives they want, the relationships they deserve, the world they want to live in.
And that's a message I think we all need to hear.
We do.
So if you're ready to take that next step, to dive deeper into Riker's ideas and start putting them into action, I highly recommend checking out his book, War on Men.
Great book. You can find it on Amazon, Kindle, and Google Play Books.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.